Bienvenido al futuro. Richmond Solution 2.0, tu mejor opción. Buenas tardes. Patti.
Buenas tardes.
¿Cómo estás? ¿Dónde estás, Patti? Empezamos.
Sí, claro.
No
Aquí
te veo.
no abre mi video, qué raro.
Cámara, pero bueno. Today we have many different things today, no? This is our second day.
Yes, yesterday it was a brilliant session. We had over 450 participants, right? Really
Yes.
well, really good
Yes.
session.
And right now we have about 150 people already logged in, and they continue to log in. We have people from Cusco, we have people from Trujillo, of course from Lima, some people from Mexico saying hello, so welcome. Argentina has also joined, Peru, Bolivia. So this is fantastic because I think something that makes possible the pandemic was to join us as one big country in Latin America. So all of you, thank you very much for joining. And we hope that today is as fantastic as yesterday, that we all have a lovely time. Patti, thank you for organizing all this because I know that you have been working really hard, especially with the two main presenters that we have today.
Actually, it's a team effort, but yes, we have two presenters today, and we have Chris West, who is our managing director, and he's going to say hello to us today.
Okay, so let's listen to Chris. Thank you.
To Chris, exactly.
Hello, and welcome to the second day of the Richmond Conference, an empowering experience for you. My name is Christopher West, and I have the honor of being the Chief Executive of Richmond Worldwide. At Richmond, we constantly publish new materials out of our editorial headquarters in Oxford. They're used by millions of students worldwide and tens of thousands of teachers. But don't think of us as a content factory turning out one-size-fits-all English language teaching materials like some of our more old-fashioned competitors. For Richmond, every customer matters, and every customer receives individual attention. The content may sometimes coincide, but the service is unique. Otherwise, it wouldn't be an empowering experience for you. We want to win your confidence, and we want to work with you for the long term. We're living in times of change. The definition and expectation of what a school is and what a teacher does is changing. Soon you'll be listening to Robin Newton and Martha Ramirez talking about flipped learning and the flipped classroom. I'm sure you'll all agree that whether you believe the idea of flipped learning began in 1993 with Alison King's publication From Sage on the Stage to Guide on the Side, or with the foundation of the Khan Academy in 2004, it's in 2020 that the method has become practically universal, sometimes more out of necessity than out of choice. We have to embrace change. It won't go away. We have to live with it. Let's make the most of it. As a publisher, Richmond has to sift through the many tendencies in education and focus on those that are likely to be here to stay and add value. For example, thinking-based learning, education for global citizenship, and socio-emotional development. Please think of Richmond not as a seller of books, but as a provider of educational solutions, and your partner before and after the start of the school year, who will join you in embracing positive change and empower you to make an even bigger difference in your students' life. Enjoy your conference.
Well, thank you, Chris. And now, who is next? Tell me about Robin. I'm new here, so I want to know everything about Robin, our next guest.
Well, Robin is special. He is a teacher trainer, co-author of many of our series. Amongst them, we have Star Players, Lighthouse, our best-selling series, Beep, which a lot of our participants probably work with. And we have this new series that he is launching that is Go International.
And Go is exclusive for our newest thing, that is Richmond Solution, which is what we are launching today and in this conference.
Exactly, yes.
Okay. So it's different. It's going to be different and with lots of improvements. So Robin, welcome to Peru.
There he is.
Hello, thank you very much. Thank you
Hi,
for
Robin.
the welcome, and thank you, Patricia, for the introduction, in your very encouraging words.
Thank
A
you.
very short bio because, well, we already posted your bio in all the communication channels, social media, so they already know who you are, I suppose.
Great.
They want to see your newest creation, and that embodies all the things that we want to give our customers in Richmond 2.0, Richmond Solution 2.0. So welcome and let's have fun. Thank you very much for joining us today, Robin.
Thank you.
Thank you. And hello to everybody who's listening or watching the session. In the old times, we used to start conferences and we used to meet in a conference room. And nowadays we start conferences by saying, hello, can you see me? Can you hear me? So it's a different times now, but it's great to be speaking with you all tonight. And I say tonight because I'm in Barcelona in Spain and it's nighttime here. I know for many of you, it's afternoon and you've probably, I imagine, just finished your teaching for the day. And it's a beautiful night here in Barcelona. I have the window open and it's 27 degrees. So if you hear a dog barking or a motorbike, it's because I have the window open. So you may hear what we call the music of the street coming to you from Barcelona tonight. Okay, so Aldo, can you start with the first slide? Thank you. Okay, so this evening's webinar, or today's webinar, excuse me, I'm going to confuse today and this evening a lot, is about flipped learning in the primary classroom. And it's really a first look at flipped learning for teachers in primary classrooms. So if you don't yet have an idea about flipped learning or much of an idea, then this talk is for you. If you already know quite a lot about flipped learning or even practicing it with your classes, then you're very welcome too. And if you have any experiences or comments that you'd like to share with the other people taking part in the webinar, then please do. We'd like to hear your comments and your experiences if you have them. Okay. And now the next slide, please. Okay, so what are we going to be looking at today? Well, first of all, we're going to address the question, what is flipped learning, and briefly explain what it is. And then we're going to look at how flipped learning applies to our primary classes, because as Chris mentioned, or as you may know, flipped learning did not begin in English language teaching and did not begin in primary teaching. It began more with older students in a first language setting. And so it's a new development in education as far as our primary English language teaching classes are concerned. So we're going to have a look at, in practical terms, how we can apply it to our primary classes. Then 3, we'll stop and have a question time. And 4, 5, and 6, we're going to be looking at examples of flipped learning from the new Richmond course, Go International, and seeing how we can apply flipped learning to a 3rd grade, a 5th grade, and a 1st grade class. And then we'll have more time for questions again at the end. Okay, next slide, please. And let's begin by having a quick look at this word flip. Well, flip is a verb. And if you look it up in a dictionary, you'll probably get something that says to quickly turn over or turn around. And we have the picture there of the chef, and we can say that he's flipping the pancake in the kitchen, okay? So he's turning it over. So this is the meaning of flip. Well, what does flip mean when we talk about our classrooms, when we talk about education, when we talk about primary students learning English? Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to contrast a traditional classroom with a flipped classroom. And as you can see from the photo in the top left, in a traditional classroom, a lot of time is spent on presentation. And the teacher, their job in the classroom is to present new material, new content, new concepts to the students. And in the case of a language classroom, obviously that's many times teaching new language, new vocabulary, new grammar, new structures and functions. And the student's role is more passive. They are there to listen to the teacher, to take in what is being explained, to make notes, to copy diagrams, to copy explanations from the board. Okay, so this is what we would call a teacher-centered classroom, because much of the class time is centered with a focus on the teacher. And what about the practice in the traditional classroom? Well, many times this takes place at home. Students will learn some new language in their classroom and then go home to do activities in their activity book or to do a little bit of writing to apply the language that they've learned in class. So this is the traditional classroom, and I am generalizing. Of course, sometimes in our traditional classrooms, we also do some practice activities. So I'm speaking in very general terms, and I'm not criticizing the traditional classroom either. I think we've all been in traditional classrooms as students, and we've all taught in a traditional way, with a teacher-centered class presenting from the front. And you can argue that in many ways it's a successful model of education. But there are other ways of teaching, other ways of learning, and the flipped classroom offers this. So if you look at the photo in the bottom left, you'll see the boy is at home doing some work. And in the flipped classroom, the presentation happens first at home. Children encounter new concepts, new ideas, or in the case of English language, new grammar, new vocabulary, new skills at home through video, through reading, before they come to class. And then, as you'll see in the bottom right picture, the practice happens when they come into the classroom and they work together, often in groups, sometimes in pairs or individually too is a possibility. And they apply the new information they learned at home to working together and developing it and practicing it in class. And Chris mentioned this phrase, the guide on the side, which refers to the role of the teacher in the flipped classroom. So instead of standing at the front presenting from the board, the teacher will of course set up activities with the students, but then we'll spend time giving instructions, helping them with their activities, checking that they have good comprehension of the new language, and works more as a guide and an assistant for the practice activities. Okay, so this is a brief and simplified explanation of flipped learning, but I hope it's clear for you. And okay, let's move on to the next slide now. Okay, so as I said, presentation in a flipped classroom happens at home. And what can that presentation be? Well, with primary students in an English classroom, presentation can be images, pictures or photos. And with Go International, the new course, and I know other courses too, students can access, for example, right, I'll start again. If students are learning vocabulary, they can access this vocabulary at home, where they have, for example, a digital flashcard, a digital image of a vocabulary item, and they can click and listen to the item. Okay, so we have, for example, 12 pictures of vegetables here. So the students can listen to can click and listen to the pronunciation of those items. And this works, of course, across the whole primary range from grade 1 to grade 6. But in a flip sense, perhaps you will use this type of activity more in first, second, possibly third grade. Okay, so just vocabulary practice with images. Presentation can also be through, oh, sorry, thank you. Presentation can also be through video. And coursebook videos are becoming more and more common in courses. In Go International and other Richmond courses, now units have between 3, 4, 5 video elements that the teacher can play in class for students to watch, or that the students can access at home. And this is a really great way to flip your classroom, is to have students accessing and watching your coursebook videos at home. And of course, there's a range of different video types. There are the more documentary type videos for Khalil lessons or culture lessons. And there are the more narrative and story-based cartoon style videos for our stories and comic strips we have in our course books. Another option would be a teacher-made video. And I don't know if you've ever made any videos on your phone or a camera to share with your classes. I know when I was teaching There Is and There Are with a third grade class, I went to the park and made a video about the park, my local park. And so, for example, I said things like, in the park, there is a lake and there is a tall tree. There are some ducks on the lake. There are a lot of butterflies. So a teacher-made video can also be a great way to introduce new language and needn't be too time-consuming. We certainly don't want to make extra work for ourselves, as we have very busy jobs already as teachers. A friend of mine has 2 cats, and she teaches young ones, first grade. And she made a video about her cats to show her students in class. And so she just introduced her cats. These are my cats. Their names are Lily and Ruby. Look, Lily is sleeping. Look, Ruby is eating. So it was very basic, but the students loved to see this video. And I think they love to know that the teacher exists outside of school. The teacher has an independent life outside the classroom. And so they were very, very interested and pleased to learn about her cats. And they would often, when they came to class after watching the video, they would often say, oh, Sally, how are the cats? Tell us about the cats. So they were very, opening this window into the teacher's world can be a really nice way to connect with your students, as well, of course, as teaching them some language. Okay, and finally, presentation can happen with text. And our course books are, of course, rich with text. Narrative text like stories and comic strips, and the information text you'll find on CLIL pages and culture pages. Sometimes the teachers can also write text. So if you, for example, want your students to learn about the structure I like plus verbing, you can write a text about you and tell the students about your hobbies. I like playing table tennis at the weekend. I don't like watching horror films or something like that, okay? So presentation, 3 ways to do it: with images, with video, or with text. Okay, next slide, please. Now, the practice that in the flip model takes place in class rather than at home often involves pair work and group work. And of course, we know, and as teachers, we know about the benefits of pair work and group work. We know that students can learn a lot from each other. So when I put students into pairs, I often try and put a stronger student with a weaker student, so the stronger student can help the weaker student with the language learning. Or when students work in groups, they can, I find it's very good to get them having different roles. So for example, one student can be the person who writes things down, another student can be the person who presents the conclusions or the report to the class about their work. Another student can be in charge of watching the time, because when students work in groups, there is a danger and a risk that they will become distracted and they will talk about things that aren't to do with English. And so it's always good to give students a time limit for any task when they're working in pairs and groups. Okay, and right. So in our real classroom, it's easy to organize pairs and groups, isn't it? But with the situation of working online and teaching online, it can be more challenging. But if, for example, you're teaching through Zoom, there are options like having breakout rooms where students can work in pairs or small groups. When we come to the questions, I'd be interested to know if anybody has tried having breakout rooms, which are like separate areas. You can put students into pairs or small groups to work for a short time on their own, away from the whole class teaching. And I'd be interested to know if anybody has tried it with primary classrooms during this confinement time where we've been teaching a lot more online. So how can we practice new language in class? If students have encountered it and been presented with new language at home, how can we practice it at class? And here's a list of activities which I'm sure are very familiar to you. They are the very typical activities which many teachers do in their English classes. So flipping your classroom doesn't have to mean working in a completely different way, starting with a whole new range of activities. We can use our familiar activities for practice in the classroom if students have already encountered a presentation at home. So I'll just quickly go through the list. So things like write a description, and that can be a description of where you live, your house. It can be a description of a person, a friend, or someone in your family, or a description of an animal. So for example, if students have watched a video at home about can and can't with animals, then they can come to class and write descriptions of different animals with can and can't. And my favorite one is always to write a description about an elephant and put in that elephants can swim. And it's always fun for students to learn that elephants can swim because they often think elephants are big, heavy animals and they can't swim. Okay, prepare a quiz. This can be done, for example, if you've been studying the WH questions, what, when, where, then you might ask the students to make quiz questions with those, with the WH questions, for example, again, about animals. Where do pandas live? When do tigers sleep? Okay, so making a quiz can be a good way to practice in class. Making a board game, which I'm sure some of you do, maybe in first grade or second grade, that can just be just with pictures, having a picture in each square of the board. Or for older students, it can be more with questions, so they can write questions in every square of the board. For example, what's the weather like? What are you wearing today? Tell me about your favorite sport. Okay, so older students can take it further and write questions or give prompts for speaking, like speaking about sports. Write a dialogue and perform it is the next idea for practicing class. And I really, really enjoy doing this with my students because they get to work in pairs, they get to practice the language together. And a dialogue is a really good way to teach them some social English. Because I find that in our classrooms, we often spend a lot of time on vocabulary, we spend a lot of time on grammar, but we maybe don't always do enough social English. So it's good, for example, how are you? I'm fine, I'm tired. Or how are you? I'm tired. Oh, what's the matter? And so on. So all these social English, like, or just greetings like, hi, how's it going? Or bye, see you later. That type of language is great to practice with dialogues. And the students love to perform their dialogues in class. I mean, if you ask a pair to come to the front to perform their dialogue and film it too on your phone, then students always enjoy watching themselves back afterwards. And if you watch back afterwards, that's a great way to give some error correction too. So you can pause the recording and pick them up on the pronunciation or vocabulary or grammar errors they might have made. Imaginary world. I mean, I really enjoy doing a lot of imaginary stuff in the classroom. So, for example, my ideal school, if you're working with 4th or 5th grade, they might enjoy working in pairs or a group to write a description of an ideal school, including things like the uniform, or maybe there isn't a uniform, what time the school day starts. And a lot of them, I'm sure you'll find, will say school day starts at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock in the morning. And things like, what are the places in the school? Maybe there's a swimming pool to go to. Maybe there's an amazing video library, okay? And then finally make a comic strip. So students can enjoy individually or in pairs making comic strips. And that's a great one for practicing present continuous. So you can say a cat is walking along the street and a man is riding his bicycle, for example, okay? And draw pictures of it. So as I say, these activities I'm sure are very familiar to you, but you can have a flipped approach, but still keep a lot of your standard favorite activities. Okay, next slide, please. The advantages of flipped learning, okay? Number one, students learn at their own pace. And I think that's probably the biggest advantage, I think, of flipped learning, because if students are watching a video in class, they will watch it as many times as the teacher plays it. So if the teacher plays it twice, fine. But then if they haven't understood it, or they haven't understood parts of it, then that's it. Whereas if they're watching a video at home, they can pause when they like. They can rewind and watch again bits that they found difficult or challenging. And the same goes for text. If they're doing some reading at home, they can use the dictionary to look up the words they don't understand. So that's a really big plus for me of flipped learning. And point two, students come to class prepared. So going back to the example of animals with can, if students have watched a video about animals and what they can and can't do, can climb trees, can't swim, etc., then they arrive in class knowing that that's what they're going to be talking about and practicing today. And I think it's especially important for our weaker students or our less confident students to be able to arrive in class and have an idea beforehand of what today's class is about. 3, students become more autonomous learners. And becoming an autonomous learner is, as we all know, a lifelong process from kindergarten right through to college or university. But I think a flipped approach where students encounter new language at home before they come to class can help them become more autonomous learners, because it's giving them a responsibility. It's giving them a responsibility to look at something before they come to class. They're not just going to come into class and the teacher's going to say, this is what we're doing today, which is the traditional way. They're going to already take some responsibility for watching the video or reading a text. And so they know, and so that they can become more autonomous and get ready for their classes. 4, there's more class time for practice. As I mentioned before, the flipped approach involves presentation at home and lots of time in the class for practicing new language in pairs or groups with the teacher helping, assisting and guiding rather than presenting. 5, there's more time in class for pair and group work. Okay, I've talked about this already, so I won't talk about that again too much, okay? And 6, teachers spend less time presenting and more time helping students practice. And I think the practice element is so essential when you're learning a foreign language. I have many friends here in Spain who say that they did English maybe starting at the age of 8 or 9, all the way through the primary school and then all the way through secondary school. And they can read and they can listen and they have a very good comprehension level, but they feel they don't have a good speaking level because they didn't speak much in their classes. Okay, they spent a lot of time listening, reading, and didn't have a lot of opportunities for speaking. And as we know, speaking is a tough skill, and it's a skill that needs lots and lots of regular practice. So I think that's a real benefit of flipped learning, is we can give students more time for practicing their speaking. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, a quick summary of what we've talked about so far. We've asked, what is flipped learning? And really that's a change from the traditional model where you do presentation in the classroom and practice at home, to turning that around, flipping that around, and having presentation at home before you come to class through reading or watching videos, and then practice in the class. The types of presentation, as I've just mentioned, can be video, reading, looking at images, ways to practice. We've gone through a bit of a list there: the quizzes, the board games, the role plays with dialogues, and the advantages. Okay, so things like having more time in your class for pair work, students coming to class prepared, students becoming more autonomous as learners, and students learning at their own pace. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, now we have a little time for questions. So if anybody has a question, please ask, or anybody has a comment, something they want to share. Patricia, hello.
Hi, we have a question from Edward Barreda. He says, flipped classes is a great way of learning, but what about the students who are reluctant to do so?
Okay, yeah, sure. That is a big issue with flipped learning, is you're passing the responsibility onto the students for watching a video before they come to class, or reading a text before they come to class. And as we know, if you go into the classroom and say, who watched the video? Everybody's going to say, me. And of course, we know that some students will be telling the truth and some students won't. So we have to give them reasons for doing the preparation, for doing the presentation at home. And these can be things like, well, you make it part of homework. So you consider it as important, as essential as any other piece of homework. And also, we're going to come on to this, but I will mention quickly now, you always give students a task to do when they're watching or when they're reading. So maybe they have some questions to answer, maybe they have a little table to fill in. So they, at the start of the class, you always say, who watched the video? Oh yes, okay, let's have a look at the questions and correct them. Oh, you watched you did the reading. Okay, well, I asked you to write a table of answers. Let me see the table. Okay, so we do have to be a bit on top of them. Yeah. But,
Exactly.
Okay, and anything else, Patricia?
For now, that's all we have. Yeah, just the one question. The rest are all comments that agree with what you're saying, basically, that we need to check up on them, right? To see whether they did watch the video.
Yeah, exactly, yes. Exactly. Because I mean, this is a different way of working for us, and it's a different way of working for them. And you know, if you're asking them to do something at home before they come to class, they're not used to that. Okay, they're used to doing homework, sure, but they're not used to doing something prior to the class, before the class, as a preparation. So yeah, we have to be on top of them about that. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Let's carry on. Okay. So I'm going to look at some examples of flipped learning that you can do using a course book. And this is a new course book, Richmond course book, that I co-wrote with my writing partner, Brendan Dunn, and it's called Go International. And we have the 6 levels of primary. And as you can see, we have our students' books, grades 3 and grades 4 here. And Go International, well, we're very pleased with it. We think it's an exciting new course. It has both a book element, but a big digital element. So lots of videos to watch, lots of activities and games for students to do at home to practice, and for the teacher to use in the classroom to practice. And on the right side of the screen, you can see our character. His name is Grammar Greg, and he is our grammar presenter. He appears in levels 3 and 4 of Go International in once per unit, and he appears in a little comic of 3 or 4 pictures, and he introduces the grammar. And it's always great to have grammar introduced in a fun way for students. So we said, let's put the grammar presentation into a comic, and this will be an engaging way for students to learn about a new grammar point. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, so here we're going to look at 3rd grade, a comic strip with Grammar Greg. And this is something students might do at home. They might watch a video of the comic strip. And as you can see, the comic strip has 3 pictures. And in the first picture, you can see that Greg is at the gym. He's there on the left with his friend Rex, who's obviously a bit bigger and stronger than he is. And Greg's asking Rex, Rex, what do you have for breakfast? So what we're looking at here is this question, what do you have for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner? You can probably guess this unit is about food. And Greg's replying with, I have 10 eggs, 8 pancakes, etc. Okay, so you can see that the target language, what do you have for breakfast? And I have is highlighted in blue. So you can really focus students' attention on this in the classroom. But if students are watching this at home, oh yeah, another thing to mention, sorry. So students can watch the cartoon, the cartoon at home and read at the same time. And then below, they have a grammar table. You can see there below the comic, we have the grammar table with a model question and model answers. Okay, and then on the right side of the screen, you can see we have the tasks for home. And this is what I would suggest as a task for this if students are watching it at home. So 1, watch the video all the way through. 2, watch again, pause after each scene and read out loud. So students, having just heard it, then get to vocalize the new language for themselves, and they've just heard a good model of pronunciation. So hopefully we'll copy that model well. And then 3 is the written task that I spoke about now. This is what it's a good idea to give them the written task so that they have something to do, something to show you when they come back to class. And here we're just matching the different foods to the meals that Greg has. So Greg talks about having bread for lunch. We can put bread next to lunch. Rex talks about having salad for dinner. We can write salad next to dinner, okay? And finally, watch the grammar table video. Okay, so in the grammar table video, you see Grammar Greg, he comes up and he puts the words into the correct order to make the question, and he moves words around, puts them into the correct order for the answer. Okay, so we hope students will enjoy learning grammar this way with a fun character. And every unit, you see Grammar Greg in a different situation. In this unit, he's at the gym. Another time he's at home watching TV with his dog. Another time he's driving his car and the car breaks down. So every time there's a fun situation. Okay, so this is the presentation of the new language. What do you have for breakfast? I have, etc. But what about when students come to class? They've encountered the language. How are they going to practice it? So if we can have the next slide. Thank you. Okay. And as I say, for the practice activities, we don't have to do anything very different from our normal classroom activities, but we just have the advantage of more time for them. So a survey with 3rd grade can be a good way to practice these questions. What do you have for breakfast? And so on. And if I was doing it, I might just write this grid draw the table on the board and ask students to copy it into notebooks, or you can prepare one before class and make a photocopy and give it out to the students. Whatever way of working suits you. Now, students, I don't know if you've worked with this question, what do you have for breakfast? What do you have for lunch with students? But they sometimes will get a bit frustrated because they will say, well, what do you have for lunch? But every day I have a different lunch. So often, and then students, our primary students, they like to say things right, don't they? They like to say, I'm 6 3/4, not I'm 6. They want to be precise. So I would often say to them, well, think about a lunch that you really like and just answer with the lunch that you really like. So if in our real classroom, in our face-to-face classrooms, sorry, as opposed to our online classrooms, students can mingle, move around the classroom, asking different people the questions and noting their answers on the table. In an online classroom, you can nominate one student to ask questions, and he or she can ask, for example, Laura, what do you have for breakfast? And everybody else can listen in and write down her answers. How can we develop this when students have their tables finished? Or possibly you can ask them to compare Laura's food with Oscar's food and see what they have in common. Do they have the same things for breakfast? Do they have different things? Or possibly you can include some health education into your class. Like, I don't know if you've heard of the 5 a day campaign. The 5 a day campaign is about getting people to eat 5 portions of fruit or vegetables every day. So you might have a banana for breakfast, an orange for your snack, and then a salad for your lunch, and try to have 5 different pieces of fruit or vegetable every day. And so you can look at, for example, Jenny's meals and see, has she had 5 a day? How many portions of fruit and vegetables has she had? Okay, so you can bring in your cross-curricular or your health education elements into your classes too. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, and this is just another fun way to do some practice of talking about what you have for your different meals. And with 3rd grade, students can still really enjoy a lot working with fantasy characters, as I'm sure you know. So we have so you can ask them to think of a fantasy character, like we have a monster, and have the monster writing about his or her different meals. And maybe we can move away from food and see that the monster is saying, I have 2 frogs, 3 rocks, and a spider for breakfast. Okay, so we can expand away from food and include other areas of vocabulary. And of course, we have the superhero too, and she's having a very healthy lunch of rice, fish, and vegetables. So you might try to get them to write a very healthy series of 3 meals too. Okay, so this is just an idea for practicing in the classroom. This question, what do you have for lunch? Okay, thank you. Next slide. Okay, so let's move up the levels to 5th grade and look at a presentation with a text. Now, in Go International, in every unit, we have on the penultimate page a culture focus, and these pages are called Go Around the World. And on these pages, we learn something about a different country every time. So we might learn about national parks in the United States and the amazing geographical features there, like the Grand Canyon. Or we might learn about toys in Japan and find out the really zany and exciting technological toys that children in Japan have. And in this instance, it's we're looking at Singapore, and we have a child presenter. Every one of these culture pages has a child presenter. So we have Lee here from Singapore, and he's presenting his information about his country in a blog. So we always have a blog style text to present the information. And if you can see below Lee's text, that to keep with the blog style, there is a little avatar there of a girl called Marion in Canada, and she's writing her comment to Lee about his blog. So we're trying to keep the blog flavor here with comments. And of course, students can write their comments about blogs too, about one of these blogs too, having read it. Now, as I said, these culture pages come right towards the end of the unit. The penultimate page, we finish with a review page, but on the penultimate page, we have the Go Around the World culture page, and the text brings together key grammar and key vocabulary that students have studied in the unit. So it's a good review and revision of the grammar, vocabulary, functional language from the unit. Okay, so well, we won't read it together now, but On the left-hand side of the blog, Lee gives information about Singapore, about the flag, about the weather, about the languages spoken. And on the right-hand side of the blog, he writes about his favorite place, a place called Supertree Grove. I don't know if you've heard of this place, but it's an amazing park in Singapore with these huge tree structures made of metal and recycled materials, and you can climb up onto the top of them. Okay, so this is your text that you can ask students to work with, and below the text, we have a comprehension activity. Number 2, answer the questions. And on the right, we have your go, and this is a personalizing activity where students get to react to what they've read in the blog and also to talk about their favorite country. So we have 2 what we call open-ended questions. They're not just closed questions with yes, no answers. We have open-ended questions where students can give an opinion about what they think of the information and the interesting things they've read in the blog. And then we have My New Words, which is looking at some of the new vocabulary that has come up in the text. And students, of course, can use their dictionaries to find out those words. And then at the very bottom, there's a video element which extends the blog, and students can learn more about Singapore. Or in this case, they can learn about multicultural Singapore and the different cultures that live there. Okay, so I've just given you a quick description of our Go Around the World page. But what about if students are at home and they're doing this text for a presentation before they come to class? I would give them a task for home, okay? And number 1 on the task would be find Singapore on Google Maps, because it's great. I think students, especially in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grade, love to look at maps. They love to learn about what flags each country has, about what the capital city is. And so a good way to orient them is to find out where each country is on the map, and then read the blog, use a dictionary to help with new words is point 2. And point 3 is where you get them to do the task that you can then check in class. Write a blog comment. So they'd write their own blog style comment about Lee's blog, and then find My New Words in a dictionary. So the new words they have, if they don't know them, they have to look them up, find them. And then in the course in the classroom, you can say, okay, let's check if you did the homework. Who can tell me what concrete means? Who can tell me what curry is? Okay, so this is some ideas for presenting a text and a task to do with it. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, and so if students have read this text about Singapore in class, at home, sorry, what can they do when they come to class? Because you want to practice this new content and new language. Well, in the class, number 1, I'm suggesting that you just basically do a correction of the task. So you find Singapore on the map, you check answers to the comprehension activity, and you test that they've looked up the My New Words in the dictionary. But how are you going to spend the rest of your class time? Well, I think they can individually or in pairs write a blog post about your country. Okay, so number 2 here, they can include general information, as Lee had, about Singapore, about the population of your country, the flag, the languages spoken, some food from your country, and a special day or a festival in your country. Okay, so they can write about your country using information that they know about your country, or possibly using internet if you have it, if that's an option, to find out more things. And then, as Lee did, writing about that special park he went to, the Supertree Park, they can include information about a special place in their blog, answering the questions like, what can you see there? What can you do there? Who do you go there with? Why do you like it? Okay. And then, of course, to follow up, students can present their blogs to the class, or they might like to record themselves if they're, or if you have your phone with you, you might want to record them presenting their blogs to the class. An alternative option you can do here is to find out about another country. So you don't, if everybody finds out about your country, then a lot of the blogs will be very similar. So you could, if you like, find out about another country with the students choosing a country that interests them. I live here in Barcelona, and as I'm sure some of you know, football is a very big deal for some people in Barcelona. And the Barcelona football team used to have a player called Eto'o, and Eto'o was from Cameroon in Africa. And one of the students was crazy about football and was a big fan of this footballer Eto'o. And so he wanted to, when I did this in class, he wanted to write about Cameroon. And I'm afraid I knew nothing about Cameroon. So we had a good 5 minutes just looking on my phone to find out some things about Cameroon in that lesson. And finally, as I say here, just in the bottom right, you can also make up an imaginary country. It can be fun for students in 5th and 6th grade also to have this imaginary element to their primary classrooms. So some ways for you to exploit a text and you do some practice of it in class. Okay, I'm just going to quickly check the time. How are we doing? Okay, 5-2. Okay, so we'll go on quickly now. No, next one, please. And we'll look at doing a flip lesson with 1st grade. And I think it's probably harder to think about or to easily think about ways to do a flip lesson with 1st or 2nd grade. The students are less independent. They need more help and more guidance. And so how can we do it? Well, in Go International, each unit begins with a vocabulary page, and there is a chant. Part of that page is a chant, and the chant is available, of course, on the audio, but also we have videos of the chant. So at home, students can watch a video of the chant, and the chant teaches them, in this instance, the name of pets. So we have the unit about pets, and they have a fun chant called Pets in My House. And so we can recommend that students watch the video at home and listen to the chant. Okay, and of course they can do this several times over. I think we need to encourage them to watch it more than once so that they get very familiar with it. And of course, in 1st grade, parents are often very involved. I know, well, I say parents are very involved. We have a big range of parents, don't we? Some are very involved, some not so much. But it can be a good way for a child to share their learning with a parent and watch the video together. And then the task for our students would be to draw your favorite pet from the video. Draw a picture of your favorite pet from the video. So students come to class to do a practice, and to practice in class, the first thing I would do, point 1, is to sing along to the chant. So everybody should be familiar with it. So you can sing along to it, and perhaps you might make up some fun actions. Okay, so this chant goes a little bit, pets, pets in my house, a dog, a rabbit, and a mouse. Okay, so that's just an example of little actions you can think up to go along with the chant. And then you can ask students to show and tell with the pictures they've done of their favorite pets. Okay, and I think in 1st grade, you can expect them to stand up and say a sentence. So you can say, my favorite pet is the bird, or my favorite pet is dog. Okay, obviously with teacher giving them support and a model. And to take this a bit further, you might do a survey in the class, looking at arranging the pictures. So everybody who has a dog, hold up your picture, and you can count how many people have a favorite pet whose favorite pet is the dog. And write the number on the board. Whose favorite pet is the rabbit? Everybody who's done the rabbit, hold up your picture, count how many, write the number on the board, and then you can find out which is the most popular pet of all your students in the class. Okay, this is what you can do with 1st grade and a presentation. Okay, next slide, please. Aha, right, okay. So I don't know you. I don't know if you know much about a flipped approach, if you have tried it or not, if you know a little and you're thinking about trying it. let's look at some tips for trying it, okay? 1, start small. Don't try to flip every lesson because it's a new way of working for you. It's a new way of working for your students, and you don't want to make it too hard for yourself, and you don't want to make it too hard for them. Okay, so point 1 is start small, and point 2 follows on from that. Set yourself a goal. So you might choose a particular class, say you've got a good group of 4th graders. You might say, I'm going to work with that class, and I'm going to do a flipped lesson twice a month with that class. Okay, so it's not going to be too much too soon for me or too much too soon for the students. Okay, and that keeps it more manageable. 3, give students a task. We've made this point already, that it's essential for students to feel that the teacher is going to observe, is going to check up and make sure that they've done the task. So give them something to write down or something to draw based on the video or the text. So you can check in class, and it's a good way to start your classes anyway. Ask about, oh, did you watch the video? What did you think? Okay, now let's correct the task. 4, praise students for good work. And obviously this is something that we do anyway for all types of, and all the time in our classrooms, but especially important when starting something new, I think. Oh, very good. Joelle, I can see that you watched the video and you answered the questions and you're ready to start the lesson with your notebook open. You know, lots of noticing of good behavior of students who've done the right thing, who've done the homework, who've done the preparation. And 5, let students and parents know what you're doing and why. I don't recommend that you say to your students, well, we're doing a flipped lesson today, but you might say, okay, we're going to learn in a different way. At home, I want you to watch a video and answer some questions, and then come to class next week, and we're going to practice what you learned in the video. Okay, and bring parents in too, if that's appropriate, especially with your younger students, because sometimes if the parents know that their children are supposed to be watching a video or learning some new words with pictures and the audio flashcards, then that can make students join in and participate too. And my last point, the English expression, if at first you don't succeed, try and try again. Anything we do new can be challenging. Anything we do new can sometimes go wrong. But if you believe, as I do, in the advantages of flipped learning, and if you believe that it can work some of the time with our primary students, then it's worth trying, and it's worth trying, keeping on trying, even if we don't have instant success. Okay, thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, well, I'm done with what I have to say, but I'd really like to know if you have any questions or if you just have a comment you want to share. That would be fantastic. Okay,
well, there are some questions here waiting for you. Is it possible to mix both traditional and flipped learning?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think you can do some of your classes in the traditional way and some of your classes in the flipped way. You may decide that grammar works well in a flipped way, because we have grammar videos. So you may decide that grammar, students watching grammar videos at home is a good idea for the presentation, and then spend time in the class practicing. But you may decide there are other things which don't work so well in a flipped classroom. So yes, it's very much about using your own discretion and your own judgment. But definitely we can do a balance of the two, absolutely.
Right, and I just wanted to add that I've seen that in the Teacher's Guide in Go International, they have the option of how to work flipped learning with each session, right? Yes?
Yeah. Yes, I mean, Go International is what you might call a regular course book, in the sense of we don't have a flipped methodology on every page in every lesson. But if you choose to try a flipped methodology, there are instructions in the teacher's book. That's right. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Okay. And we have another question from Leslie Salvador. How long in advance should we send the material? I guess she's
Oh.
talking about the presentation material, right?
Right.
Mhm.
That's a good question. I mean, I would usually do it in the class beforehand, but I suppose you know your student. I mean, if you're doing, well, no, not necessarily in the class beforehand, but if you have English on Monday and English on Tuesday, you want to give students more time than just Monday night for watching the video or reading the text. So I would say maybe give them a few days, you know, because you don't want them to just say, right, tomorrow I want everybody to watch a video for tomorrow, because maybe that's not fair. They have other homework, other things going on. But I think if you give them a few days, that's fair. And also if you give them too much warning, then they may forget.
Okay, and the last question, do you think they could use this approach with preschoolers in kindergarten?
Oh, that's a really good question. To be
Yeah.
honest, I don't feel qualified to give an answer because I haven't done it myself, and I haven't read about research or other teachers' experience of doing it with preschool. But I'm fascinated. It would be fascinated to learn about anybody who has tried it.
Mhm.
But yeah, great question. Very thought-provoking question. Yeah.
We
Okay.
have one more question from our people that are following on YouTube, and they would like to know whether you can give them some pointers on how to practice speaking on a virtual environment.
Ah, very good. Okay. Right. Well, this depends to some extent on the platform you're using and whether you want to organize your students into the breakout rooms, because lots of people I know are using Zoom, and with the Zoom platform, you can put students into these separate rooms, what called the breakout rooms. I would try first with your grade 5 and grade 6 students and give them some very definite tasks. So for example, they have to interview each other and you give them a list of questions beforehand, or you've made sure that they have prepared the questions themselves beforehand. So something very structured to do, and move into the breakout room. If going into a breakout room is not an option, then maybe you have to nominate different students to take a role. So you can say, for example, Juan, today you're going to be my assistant and you're going to be doing asking the questions or giving the instructions, and you've prepared Juan before the class with what he needs to say, what he needs to do.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, maybe there are different ways. Maybe people participating have a different way too.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much. This is only the beginning. I think this is the first time that we actually speak in public about this flipped classroom used in the school environment. So I think you're going to have many questions afterwards when all of the teachers in Peru begin and around Latin America begin practicing this methodology. Thank you very much. We know that it's really late for you in Barcelona.
Yes.
So really,
yeah, but you know the Spanish lifestyle, people go to bed late and get up late, so it's not so bad.
Okay.
But yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me, and it's been a pleasure listening to. I haven't been listening. I've been talking. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I hope it's been useful for the participants tonight. So thank you very much.
Absolutely, thank you very much. And now we're going to continue with our program, Patty, no?
Yes, we're going to have a video. Esdras Taylor is going to tell us, give us some news about Richmond Solution.
Richmond Solution 2.0.
2.0.
Our new way of working.
Exactly.
And is the launch of our new. And after that, we're going to have a break, right? 5 minutes.
After that, we have a 5-minute break and we start again at 5:15. Yes.
Okay. So we hope you enjoy Esdras' message and our launch of our video.
Hola a todos, soy Esdras Taylor, soy el director de desarrollo de negocios para idiomas en Grupo Santillana y director de Richmond Solution para América Latina. Realmente es muy grato poder contar con todos ustedes en esta primera conferencia virtual de Richmond, Perú, en donde vamos a tratar muchos temas relevantes, como por ejemplo la aplicación de metodologías activas tanto dentro como fuera del aula, en distintos ambientes digitales y sobre todo también en cómo se puede evidenciar el aprendizaje del idioma inglés en los alumnos y cómo se puede comunicar a los distintos actores de la comunidad educativa. Bueno, es por ello que Richmond ha diseñado un sistema que permite a los colegios poder alcanzar sus objetivos pedagógicos de acuerdo al programa de inglés que hayan escogido. Y esto nos lleva a hablar de Richmond Solution. Richmond Solution es un sistema de innovación educativa que tiene como fin primordial justamente eso, poder alcanzar los objetivos del programa de inglés de cada colegio. Además, Richmond Solution ofrece a la comunidad educativa un ecosistema basado en modelos activos de gestión y enseñanza de la lengua inglesa, donde el alumno sigue estando en el centro del proceso de enseñanza-aprendizaje. Con la ayuda de un enfoque estratégico basado en evidencias de aprendizaje, apoyamos a las instituciones educativas en su transformación educativa. Estas evidencias de aprendizaje son definitivamente la manera más confiable para determinar el progreso del alumno. Mediante pruebas que señalan si el aprendizaje es efectivo, su uso tiene efectos positivos en la organización de una institución educativa al facilitar la evaluación de sus programas y así poder determinar el impacto y la eficacia para alcanzar sus metas. Es por ello que en esta conferencia esperamos poder enriquecer el conocimiento pedagógico y didáctico para la enseñanza del idioma inglés que todos ustedes llevan a cabo diariamente con sus alumnos y en especial poder aportar nuevas ideas para trabajar de manera bien sea invertida, mixta o a distancia. Así es que muchas gracias por su participación y esperamos continuar siendo su socio estratégico para sus programas de inglés. Hasta pronto.
It has been a long road and full of challenges. Being bilingual on graduation day has been one of my greatest achievements because I now have the tool set to go on reaching all the objectives I might set for myself in the future. A world of opportunities opened up to me when I started studying with Richmond Solution. I was really able to learn autonomously. I could study at home, in the library, or in the classroom. I could dive into the book, or by being connected to the internet, I could explore fascinating activities that empowered my English skills. I was able to instantly access the answers as they were only a click away. I loved working in a team. My friends and I had great fun as we learned. I learned a lot from them, and I know that they learned something from me. The exams were always challenging, but thanks to the practice that was constantly available on the digital platforms, we were fully up to speed to meet these challenges. I am really going to miss my school.
Richmond Solution helped us hugely to transform the English program in our school. We have now got the best tools to guarantee the best learning. Let me show you. Part of the process gives us access to a coach who builds our confidence, as well as training courses to better our abilities and to continue our improvement. Yes, good teachers are always keen to learn more. As we live in the cloud, as we say in this connected world, we have digital resources to improve our classes and which allow our students to learn from anywhere in the world, even quite literally in the clouds if they are on board an airplane. Through the Richmond Test Manager and Learning Analytics, we have a variety of possibilities to test, validate, and monitor students' progress. It is amazing to be able to see how your students are learning and to have the evidence of their learning at your fingertips. This really does make us very happy indeed. Richmond Solution is a solution designed for you.
Please stay tuned. We will begin our second part of the conference in a short period of time, just enough for you to go and get something to drink or to go to the toilet. So we will be right back.
Okay, and we're ready to start again.
It was a short, quick break, but
Yes,
change.
exactly. Okay, so right now, I think it's time that we introduce Javier Laria, our General Manager from Santillana, who wants to give all our participants a short message. Yes? Okay.
And after that, we will be right away with Marta, or we also break up? And we
After that, we will start with Marta. Yes.
Okay, perfect. So let's listen to Javier.
Give me a second. ¿Dónde está? Sorry.
Buenas tardes a profesoras, profesores y autoridades de las diversas instituciones educativas que nos acompañan. Mi nombre es Javier Laría y soy el director general de Santillana en Perú. Quiero agradecerles a todos por su presencia, siempre valiosa y activa, y por su participación y seguimiento a la Richmond Conference 2021. Agradezco también a Ángela Patricia Bella, nuestra gerente de Richmond en Perú, y a todo su equipo por el empeño y compromiso que han puesto en conseguir juntar a estos conferencistas de primer nivel. Espero que lo estén disfrutando y aún nos quedan muchas cosas buenas por venir, hoy y también mañana. Enseguida, Marta Ramírez ayudará a poner de cabeza a las salas de clase, contándonos de manera práctica cómo podemos invertir nuestras clases y evolucionar según lo que los nuevos tiempos nos demandan. No se lo pierdan. Nuevamente, muchas gracias a todos por su presencia. Para Richmond, cada uno de ustedes es muy importante. Continúen disfrutando de este evento.
Gracias, Javier. So let's continue as we were told to continue. Marta, are you there?
Hi, I'm right here.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you so much for accepting the invitation as well. Our teachers in Peru are looking forward to hearing how to flip classroom, because it's all very, very new for us. So I don't know, welcome to Peru, have fun, and everybody, this is the time to ask questions, because you have someone that really, really like to flip classrooms around. Thank you, Marta. Enjoy.
Thank you, Angela. Okay, so hi everyone. Thanks so much for being connected to this this important event. And so today I'm going to be talking about flipped learning, and particularly I will be sharing with you my experience on the steps that I take to flip, so that at the end of this session you have specific strategies, specific ideas, so that you can start flipping as soon as possible if you're not flipping already. We're going to start with a Padlet link. Aldo, if you can share the screen, please. Great. Thank you. And I will send it into the chat. It's right here. Okay, so I'm sending a link into the chat, and Aldo's going to show the next slide, which has the short link. So if anybody wants to connect through their, through their mobile phones, you can use this very short link. It's not very, but it's shorter than the original one. If not, in the chat, I've placed the actual link. And so I will be sharing my screen so that you can see, so I can see your responses in real time. All right. Okay, so this is the link that you should be seeing, and there's a little plus button at the bottom, a pink plus button. You need to click on that plus button and start writing. Somebody's already writing in real time, so we can see your responses. My recommendation is, from everything that you've seen, what you just heard from Robin, how can we define flipped learning in one sentence? Like, what if we had to say it in a very short way? How can we do it? Okay. Some of you can also post. So if you haven't used Padlet before, when you click that plus button, so as you're writing, I'm just going to show you this because it's a really, really great tool, and it's one of my favorites. When you click that plus button, you can link, you can write, of course, and you can also, if you wanted, send an image. So if you feel that the way that you can introduce your response to this way is through an image, you can click right here and find an image that shows how you understand flipped learning. All right, so for this, we're going to give just a couple of minutes just to, whoa, there we go. Everyone's writing at the same time. Okay, so let's see. You can also change the color of your, if you wanted to, maybe put a different color, the 3 little dots, and you can choose a color. You want to put color into this Padlet. All right, so let's look at some of your responses. So here we have, it's mixed learning. So I'm going to, let's see if it lets me. There you go. Okay. So it's mixed learning. Yes, I mean, it is, if we understand mixed learning as a combination of different types of learning approaches, definitely. Flipped learning allows you to do a lot within that class time. Robin mentioned that one of the benefits was that you have more time for students. You have more time for students, for example, to practice, to apply speaking, etc. So you can mix a lot of other approaches. I'll mention that a little bit, like in a couple of minutes. All right. Inverting the traditional model. Yes, that's the point of the flipped, right? Using the term flipping is that the traditional model is what you flip. And flipped learning is not new. It It has been called previously the inverted model. It's been called the alternate model. Yes, like other experts or other educators who published articles on flipped learning have given it other names. And the term that we use today is like the official definition of the flipped learning network from 2014. So you might hear maybe inverted model, alternate model, flipped classroom, and they are pretty much referring to the same thing, although flipped learning kind of evolves. So I'll talk a little bit about that too. All right, so we have, I imagine this is checking info in advance, not in advance. But you might maybe want to do it in advance. You could flip basically anything you want, but okay. Students explore new information. Okay, in advance, got it. It's a class. Okay, some of you are still writing, so I don't see the full. I'm gonna reload here just to make sure that I'm seeing the same thing you're seeing. All right. All right, checking the material at home and putting it into practice in the classroom. Yes, but not only checking the material at home, and I will be talking about this in a few. You can flip or you can in-class flip. So you can send that material home for students to prepare on their own autonomously, or you can in-class flip, preparing the material and doing it with students to support their learning. For example, this works very well with preschool students or very young learners who are not capable of doing the work by themselves at home, and maybe their parents are busy, you know, they can't sit with them and do the flipped work with them. So that's where in-class flipping comes in. So I will definitely mention this. All right, let's see. Okay, let's see. So someone here put task-based learning, and you can, flipped learning is not task-based learning. Task-based learning is a different approach, but you can combine them, right? Okay, let's see. It's a new way to teach, didactic. It's not exactly a new way to teach. We've been flipping for a long time. The first, let's say, like the first experts that we know have flipped, I mean, in the literature, is Eric Mazur, a teacher of physics at Harvard University. And Eric Mazur started flipping in 1990. So, you know, but we're in 2020, that's 30 years ago. So it's not exactly new, but it is new to us. Like people had been doing it, and we've known about it, like the actual term from 2014, flipped classroom came out in books in 2012, okay. But no, it's not new. And I'm sure that when I share some of these strategies, many of you might say, or hopefully you'll say, hey, I've actually done that. Like this was flipping, because yeah, it's not new. But it's, you know, it's become a buzzword. Everyone's talking about flipping. And we're going to notice that we actually probably have been doing it. All right, let's see some other responses over here. Student-centered, absolutely. Flipped learning is like changing the stages or phases of learning. Yes, you have to, you know, you have to make some changes. Okay, someone's typing like really fast so I could read it. That's okay. All right. To give students information before, okay. Could be, remember, before or in class, and I will clarify this in this aspect. All right. Let's look at this yellow one here. Flipped learning is a methodology that helps teachers by assigning students lecture materials to be made at home or outside of class. I think here the key word is helps. Flipped learning helps teachers, and flipped learning helps students because it takes into account their learning preferences. It takes into account their rhythm to learn. And all of these things, when we do it in a traditional way, being the center of the class, definitely, you know, we're basically obliging students to understand what we're teaching them in the time that we're teaching them. So, okay, we'll mention a little bit more about this. Okay, so this is like me eyeing, and the first thing that I see, okay. Okay, so I've seen, yeah, like checking in advance, you do it at home, etc. So I'll be making that clarification. But from what I see here, definitely, like you've got the key information here. Someone says including elements from traditional and modern teaching. So when you flip, you're including elements of pedagogy, If you're flipping, you're not explaining the content, right? Because that's what you're flipping, right? But you can combine. You can flip and you can go traditional. You can basically, do one and the other. That's not a problem. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Thanks a lot for all of your descriptions in this Padlet. So this gives me an idea of what we're understanding. All right. Okay, and we're gonna continue. And actually, I'm gonna show you something. So Aldo, just don't show my slide. Okay, it's fine. So the next, it's okay. Go ahead. So to the next, in the next slide, I want to share with you my understanding of flipped learning. Next, Aldo. Thank you. Okay, so what you're doing here is that you're seeing a sketch note that I designed with my understanding of flipped learning. And why a sketch note? Number one, well, because I'm learning how to draw, and I consider that sketch noting is one of the best strategies that you could use as a teacher to support students, learners, to take into account other teaching styles. And so I decided to make my own sketch note, and I'm actually going to share it with you in a link. If you want to see it later in a little more detail, come back to it. It's right there in that link that I've just sent into the chat. And so I'm just going to kind of break it up a little bit for you, and I'm going to share my screen again. Thank you, Aldo. All right. And I'm sharing my screen so you could see it like zoomed in. So basically, okay, when we talk about flipped learning has been defined in different ways by different educators throughout the years. And the one that we know, the most common one, is pedagogical approach, right? So it's a pedagogical approach, which means that it's not something that has a specific formula to follow. So teachers can adapt it to their context. This is something really important that needs to be clear to you, in the sense that one teacher could flip one way and the other teacher could flip another way. For example, if I have a course book, I could flip with my course book. It's wonderful. I have the content, but other teachers might not have a course book. So they're going to flip with a video, with a reading, with flashcards, right? So let's keep in mind that flipped learning, because it's an approach, there is not exactly a specific ABC. There are some elements that tell you this is flipping, but teachers can do it in different ways and should adapt to their contexts. Flipped learning requires a growth mindset. Flipped learning is a change in your mindset, because as a teacher, you need to learn how to lose control. Like when we're at the center, we're in control. So we're like explaining, the students are like quiet, writing. When you flip, they're the ones in the center. What is the teacher doing? Quiet, listening, monitoring, providing feedback. So that is not easy when we have been teaching for so many years in a different way, right? So it does require you being open to the chaos, right? Like it's because everything, it's so different, right? And then we start thinking, is this going to work? Are students going to do the task? What if they don't do it? Like all these questions that I'm sure you have, and that I hope I'll have enough time to answer when we get to the questions, the Q&A session. Alas says it's a framework. So again, a frame, right? There are a lot of things you can put into that frame. Like what picture of your pedagogy are you going to put within that frame? How are you going to teach everything else apart from the content, right? Robert Talbert says it's an operating system. So let's imagine our phones, right? If we have Android or iOS, and we have the operating system, but we're the ones who put in the apps. And those apps are your teaching strategies. So as an educator, in my case, I love teaching. I love gamification. I'm gamification and game-based learning. So I like playing games. And so I flip my classes, but I also put in that app of, I'm going to teach it with this. And as a teacher, you can have an eclectic approach. You can do task-based, you can do project-based learning, you can do inquiry-based learning. I mentioned gamification, game-based learning. Like basically, you can use different types of teaching approaches within the flipped learning model, because it opens spaces and times for you to teach a lot more than you would expect, right? John Bergman, who is one of the pioneers of flipped learning, says it's a meta strategy. So this goes back to like operating system, meta strategy, like the strategy of all other strategies. It fits with other strategies. And a very close friend of mine and colleague and co-author of a book we just finished writing about flipped learning, Carolina Rodriguez Buitrago, defines it as a compassionate teaching methodology. So she says that because of flipped learning, as educators, we get closer to students. If I'm not at the center, what am I doing? I'm monitoring, I'm talking to them, I'm getting to know them better, I'm understanding what they're doing. I'm getting like a better vision of their learning process. So as a teacher, it makes me, at least it's been my experience and Carolina's as well, it makes us more empathetic. It makes us create stronger relationships with our students. So I think that's like important, because here you see there's like different ways to approach this particular flipped learning model, framework, operating system, meta strategy, approach, etc. For me, so this is me here. For me, it's a teaching lifestyle. I've been flipping for more than 6 years. And when I started flipping, my life changed completely. My life changed completely means that when I stopped being the center of the class, when I stopped having control of the content, and I started focusing on, okay, what do my students need? What are they understanding? How can I design material for them? How can I use this course book for them, right? When I started in that process, it made me change my own perspective of teaching. And so it kind of like my ego kind of went like from here to like as an educator, right? I said, no, so I have to focus on my students. And for me, becoming a flipped learning educator and advocate of flipped learning became my lifestyle. I love teaching. I'm passionate about it. I talk about flipped learning, around the world. And that's why I'm so happy to be here to share with you my experience, because I think this is a lifestyle, because I think teaching is a lifestyle if you're passionate about what you do. So there, to give you like some general ideas. And then we have the key. So what is the key of flipping? We have direct instruction, right? In traditional teaching, this is what we tend to talk about. So I give content, I make demonstrations as a teacher, I give examples, I give instructions, talk about experiences, give explanations, give feedback. All of this, you can flip it, okay? All of this, you can move it to the individual space, which is students' autonomous access to the content. How can we do this? In many ways. And I will tell you, I'll go a little more in detail when I get into the steps. But the key point here is that students can study at their own pace, and that students, can access the content and make decisions with the content without running, like, oh my God, the teacher already finished explaining, and teacher, I have a question, teacher, or no, I'm so shy. I'm not going to ask the teacher, I didn't understand. When we flip, that's not a problem, because the shy students look at the content, they go back, the advanced students might not even look at the content because they don't need to. Yes? So let's keep these things in mind. And the teacher, this is the teacher. This is me, because probably can't see it, but I have purple hair over here. Is a guide on the side, as has already been mentioned. The teacher designs and curates content. And very importantly, the teacher reflects and shares the content or the experiences that he or she has with flipping. So there's a flipped learning community. There's a huge flipped learning community. I'll recommend some resources at the end, but you can put flipped learning in Facebook, and you're going to see there's a community in Facebook. flip learning in Twitter, you're going to see there's a huge community in Twitter. You can Google, you can Google, of course, flip learning. You can look in LinkedIn, that you're going to see that there's a lot of educators who are flipping and who are sharing, because they've understood that when you're not at the center anymore, you want to work for your students with other educators as well. So the group space, right? In this case, the synchronous online learning space becomes dynamic, interactive, and creative. Now, these words, these keywords come from the Flip Learning Network official definition, which I will share with you in the chat as well. And the Flip Learning Network talks about 4 pillars: flexible environment, learning culture, intentional content, and professional educator. So when we talk about flipping, according to the Flip Learning Network, the educator has an important role. It's not just the content, it's not just the culture, it's not just the environment, okay? So it contains a lot of aspects. And as I had mentioned in one of the posts that you made in the Padlet, we can flip content outside of class or inside of class. So in class flip is when I have prepared, for example, a video, and then my students are doing it with me in class, but I'm not explaining, I'm guiding the process, I'm giving them a task, as Robin mentioned, super important in flipping, giving tasks, and I'm supporting their process. So this is just to give you a like kind of to support a little more what you've already seen about flipping. And I want to jump into those steps that I really want to share with you. So I'm going to share, while Aldo shows the presentation, I'm going to share in the chat a link of the official. When I say official, is the Flip Learning Network, has an official definition, and that's the definition that you will see is the basis of my sketch note, and then I start connecting to what other educators have done. So I've just sent the link into the chat. For any of you who are maybe not seeing the chat, you can go into fliplearning.org, and you're going to see there's a tab that says definition. It's in English and it's in Spanish, so you can share it with other educators. And there you're going to find the pillars and the indicators, which becomes a checklist for us who are flipping. So we're like, am I doing this? Yes. Am I? Oh no, I'm not doing this. I need to keep this in mind, so that we, really apply flip learning in its profound understanding. Okay. All right. Next, Aldo. Thank you. So what I want to do today, because our time is so short, is that I want to talk about the planning phase. And because, of course, we plan, we teach, and then we evaluate or we reflect on our planning. Today, I'm just going to talk about the planning phase. So the first one, next one, thank you. So the first one is, it's pretty obvious, and it's choose a planning resource. When we're going to plan, we can't plan, mentally, like, oh, I'm just going to, let me see if I can remember everything. No, we need to have a planning resource. In my case, I've been an educator for more than 16 years. And I teach now at a university in Bogota, in Colombia, but I also work with schools, and I also work with universities in different countries. I've worked with Ecuador, I've worked with the US, and I love to plan on paper. So like right now, right here, because I'm in my desk, you could see I have my planning, yes? So I love to plan on paper because I believe in the power of writing by hand. And I also believe in the power of literally just like, nope, this didn't work, and writing some notes and then going back to, a notebook and checking your planning. So one of them is choosing your planning resource. Now, as I talk to you, I would like you to interact in the chat, more so that there's interaction among yourselves. So it would be really nice if you type, like, for example, how do you plan, right? Do you plan in a notebook? Do you plan in a Google document? Like, well, what are you using to plan? And the other thing that I do next, Aldo, And the other thing that I think, Sandro, the other thing that I do is I also plan digitally. So here you're seeing like a whole bunch of slides, right? And these are the slides of a course that I taught about flipped learning in Ecuador. And you're seeing like a lot of things, right? And of course, what was the topic? Flipped learning. So I gave a 6-week course to teachers at a university in Ecuador. And I started planning in my slides the key information. So, what was the session? What are the objectives? What are the activities? And then I have like my PowerPoint, let's say, with everything in order. And so that when I was going to the next class, I had the previous slide and I could look at, okay, last session's objectives were this, and we're going to be working on that, etc. So if you like working digitally, the planning could be also the slides that you're going to show. Like these are the slides that I projected to the educators through Zoom, and they became my planning, my planning compass. That's where I knew, okay, we did this activity, here are the instructions, etc. So it really depends on whatever, fits with your teaching and your pedagogical style, but that's the first key step. You need to find a place to plan, all right? Okay, let's go with the next one. Thank you. Okay, so you've chosen what you're going to use to plan. Next, choose a lesson to flip. Now, I love that Robin mentioned one of his tips was start small, right? Or start, yes, I think that he used the term start small. And that's what I always recommend. So if you want to start flipping, don't go crazy flipping all your classes. No, start small, start with something, with a lesson. So you're going to teach. Here I'm giving you examples of the same course, right? It was like a flipped learning lesson. So I said, okay, I'm going to teach my students about the elements of differentiation. So that's what I flipped with a reading. Yeah, so I had my lesson, and I said, okay, this explanation, I'm going to flip it. So what are those lesson objectives that you want to work on? Think of the complexity of the topic and choose what you could flip. Okay, and I'll show you some examples. Okay, next. The third point is deciding how you want to flip. So I've been mentioning outside and inside. The outside flip is what most educators are talking about nowadays. When they say flipping, like I flipped my classes, flipping is outside, yes? When they say I in-class flipped, it's inside. So how does this work in online sessions? Well, outside is asynchronous, right? Like, because we're all home, like nobody's in your class. Everyone's like on the computer. So outside, they're flipping. You send that flipped content outside, meaning do it without me, right? At home, you're at home all the time. And then in-class flipping is when we're connected, you're going to do the flipped content with me, and I support the process. So there are different types of in-class flip. Next, please. And what I'm sharing with you here is the work that I have been doing for the past 4 years, I would say. Yeah, like about the past 4 years. And with my colleague and friend, Carolina Rodriguez Buitrago, which I mentioned her earlier, what we did was we started elaborating on this idea of in-class flipping. Initially, in the face-to-face setting, it was said that in-class flipping was using stations, right? So there was station work and students could access the flipped content in a station. Carolina and I took it further. So I'm going to share with you another link because we wrote a whole book about in-class flip. So I have to keep it simple to share with you the other ones. So here you're going to find a little bit like better explanation of what in-class flip is. But basically, you can flip in like 2 main ways. One of them is like the in situ non-station flip, which is when students work alone, like solo, duo, or group, and they access the content in the class with you. How does this work virtually? We're connected, right? And I tell students, okay, so hi students, today we're going to be working on the verb to be. So the first thing that I want you to do is you're going to watch this video and you're going to answer these questions, okay? That's in-class flipping. Why? Because I could have explained that content. Traditionally speaking, I could decide to, no, you know what? Let me explain it to you. Listen to me and just take notes. But what I'm doing is I'm allowing students to work in groups or to work in pairs or by themselves and to access that content while I'm here monitoring the process. So I can ask them, okay, do you have any doubts? What's going on? Do you need some extra minutes to pause and take notes, etc.? So we can support that process. So that's one of the ways. The other way, next, is with, oh, sorry. So I have this example. I forgot I had this example. So here's an example of how I'm doing it in the platform. So here you see that this is my platform, my university platform, and I've placed specific steps for students. And instead of me teaching them storytelling techniques, because they have to learn about storytelling techniques, what I did was I created an infographic. So that's an infographic created by me. And I told them in class, you will work in groups, check out the techniques, start with this, that. And they were in breakout rooms in Zoom, right? So I put them in separate teams. They had to look at the content. And if they needed me, they could ask for help. So I could like pop into the like, hi, do you have any doubt? What can I help you in, etc. So this is an example of how we can in-class flip, doing it when we're connected with them synchronously, okay? If we do this asynchronously, we're flipping. That's what it is, okay? So the other way, next, thank you, Aldo. The other type of flipping is the station rotation model. So there are different types of models. I'm not going to go in depth in these right now, but basically you can, depending on the needs that you have with students, you can do a loop, you can sequence the content, you can mix it, which is more free. Students can choose, you know, what content they need to work on, or you can do a half and half, which is half of the students work with me as a teacher, the other half are working in flipped content at the same time, right? So how does this work with virtual settings? Well, the concept of stations is a little different because we're not moving. So the stations could be that students are in breakout rooms and then they rotate. Yes, like the rotation is more virtual because we're in a virtual setting. You can't, it's really hard to do this virtually. In a physical setting, you have the tables, you have the stations, you monitor while students are working. Okay, thank you. So, okay, next one, Aldo, please. Okay, the fourth step, which is one of the things that I've learned that I really, this is like the top tip to share with you, because this was my aha moment as an educator in pandemic. So I've been flipping for 6 years and all of my classes were flipped. Yes, like every class that I teach is flipped. All the content is flipped. Of course, I'll alternate maybe with a traditional explanation because there are topics that I love and I just want to talk about them. And so I prefer not to flip them, and I prefer to, have interaction with my students while I explain it. But the aha moment that I had was that when you're in a virtual setting, everything is so, of course, everything is so different, but also time works so slowly. I'm sure you've lived this, and it's like you planned a lesson for an hour that normally in a face-to-face setting lasted an hour, and now you're virtual and you're like, oh my gosh, it's 2 hours and I haven't done the hour class that I used to do in a face-to-face setting. So time is super different, and flipping your instructions is going to allow students to always go back to them without having to say, ay, que no entendí. Yes? Oh, profe, ¿qué hay que hacer? So this was my aha moment, and that's why I boldly put it as always flip instructions, because it's what I'm doing. I'm not giving instructions. I'm trying to always just think of, when I'm planning, I say, okay, what do they have to do? Okay, let me write it down. Let me put it on the slide. Let me put it in the platform. For example, I use a textbook as well. So let me, focus on that explanation of the textbook instead of explaining it, right? So here we see an example of a project task on diversity. if I'm going to tell students, okay, students, let's read it together, that's teacher talking time. What I could do is, okay, students, so we're going to take a moment and I want you to read, take a moment and actually read this explanation by yourself and tell me if you have any doubt. And you let students do it by themselves. So what are you flipping? You're talking. You're not talking. Let them check the instructions by themselves. And if they're working in, for example, in breakout rooms, then you can share the instruction. And then when they're in a different room and you're not there, they go back to the instruction. It's lovely because we don't have to repeat each other. We don't have to repeat ourselves to them all the time, right? And students, this helps them also develop the autonomy. This helps them become more conscious of what they're reading because students do not know how to read. Okay, I don't know if this happens in Peru, but in Colombia, like, teacher, ¿qué hay que hacer? And I'm like, what? It's right there. Okay, let's go back to the instruction, check it again. Tell me if you got it. I see, so flipping the instructions is one of my biggest tips for you. And you can do this today. Okay, tomorrow, because you're going to be tired after this, a lot of information. But tomorrow, you can already start flipping that instruction. If you're using books, your textbooks, and you're reading it with them, flip it. Let them read it. Let them access it autonomously in class or out of class. That's your choice, depending on your students' ages, of course, their level of autonomy, which is the key. All right. Okay, next one. All right. My fifth step in planning, right? So I'm thinking, okay, what am I going to flip this? What are they going to do? Keep in mind the context and the resources. So do you have a high tech, a no tech, or a low tech teaching setting, right? What are you using? Are you using a textbook? If you have a course book, wonderful, because the course book has all the content there that you can just choose to flip. It's wonderful when we have course books. It's wonderful when we have platforms, for example, but many schools don't have them. So what do we have? Do we have a physical course book? Do we have a digital course book? Do we have a platform? Are we only communicating through email? Like, what are these resources that we're using, right? Next, please. All right. So when you've taken into account that context and the resources, this is really important. This is a really important question, and it's, where are you going to make the content accessible to students? Do you have a platform? Use it. Yes, if you have a platform, use it. That's where the content should be accessible to students. If you do not have a platform, then there we need to think, okay, so what's going to happen? How are we going to do this? Are we going to send them through email? There are educators that are in rural settings and they're sending the content to their students through WhatsApp, right? Or through a chat or through a chatting app. So it's really important to think here, how am I gonna make it accessible? And how am I gonna make it accessible in an easy way? Yes, it is not something like click, double click, 5 clicks, and then you get lost. No, to the point, something super easy. Okay, next one, please. And very importantly, how are you going to connect with students? Are you going to use a WhatsApp app? Are you going to use emails? Does the platform have an internal email? So notice how all of this is connected to how I'm going to flip and how I'm going to take my class further. Because I could have the content to flip. I could say, ooh, I'm a super YouTuber. I'm going to make a YouTube video, and then my students don't have internet connection. So how am I going to make them, how am I going to let them see the video? So how you connect with students is super important. All of these elements are really crucial in the planning phase. All right, next. Okay. So you've decided you know what your context is, you know what resources you have, and so you're going to decide the material. So here you can flip with anything that will replace the explanation, instructions, examples. Remember the sketch note, all of those elements, anything that will replace that is viable and it is completely acceptable. So next one, please. So you can, for example, video. Everybody talks about video when they mention flipped learning, because flipped learning started to become very popular, very well known, and started to show all the benefits because teachers started flipping with video. But of course, there are other resources. So let's see some examples of these. Next. All right. So you can use the material that you should use the material that you count on. So let me give you an example with a textbook. So here we have flipping grammar. We have a grammar explanation. If you use a textbook, all textbooks have grammar explanations, and you can use that in favor. You do not need to necessarily explain the whole grammar. You can use the book. So here we see that the topic is present continuous for future arrangements, and you can use the grammar box from the book, right? And you can flip it. You can tell students, okay, for next class, you're going to analyze that grammar box. You're going to read through it. And what? What is the task? What do they have to do? It's not just read through it. It's not just analyze it. Okay? As educators, we need to give them a task. So you're going to read through it and you're going to write 2 questions that you have about the structure. Or you're going to read through it and you're going to write three sentences, 1 with each structure, etc. Yes? So or you're going to read through it and you're going to highlight the negatives, the affirmatives. Like, you can get students to interact with the content so that we can see that they are understanding it. You can even take it to another level, such as, depending on your students' language level and the topic that you're talking about, you're going to read this explanation and you're going to draw, or you're going to make a comic or whatever. Yes, like, you can do a lot of things. And the other thing, of course, is a lot of textbooks, and Robin mentioned it, are providing such wonderful video resources. Like, if you have the video resources, you've already got half of the flipping there. Yes, like, it's already there. And if students have access to it, well, that's absolutely awesome. And we should definitely take advantage of using books. When we can't use books, then we have to make other types of decisions. Next. So what are these other types of decisions? We have to curate material, right? We're like curators of material. So we have to see, okay, we decide what material we want to use, but then we make decisions. So you know what, for this, I think an audio is perfect, like a listening, or you know what, this song explains the vocabulary that I want my students to use. You can flip with a song. You can flip with a podcast. Of course, you can flip with reading material, a chapter of a book, reading, an article, a website, a poster, a comic. I mean, here, the type of material that you choose was really going to depend on the topic and the accessibility of this material. But it doesn't have to be just video, or it doesn't have to be just reading. Like, really, we can, think outside the box and teach outside the box, finding such wonderful material that so many educators are sharing around the world. What's the beauty of teaching English? That there is so much material out there. I work with educators that teach law, teach finances, teach, like other types of subjects that are not so easy to find. But English, you're going to be able to find so many great material if you don't have it already. But if you already have it, use it, right? Explore those textbooks that you have, explore those platforms that you have, so that you can really take advantage of them. Next. All right. If you don't curate material, you can create material. You don't have to create material if you don't have the time, if you don't have the resources, if you're unsure, of like what you can do regarding that material. But what research has shown is that students love when the teacher creates his or her own material. So here's just a couple of examples of material that I have. a video of me telling students like, hi, so today we're going to be working on this and that. And it's not elaborate. It's like literally me in my room recording. Yes, like but it's flipped because I wanted to use the class time for something else. So I record myself on my computer and I upload. I have a YouTube. I use YouTube, so I upload it to YouTube and I send it to students. So that's an option. I've also created tutorials. I'm like, okay, let's see how this works. So you're gonna do this in class. Here's a short 3-minute video showing how you can do it. So that's flipping, like creating tutorials, infographics, so that you see 20 ideas to start presentations. Okay, and of course I have material in English and in Spanish, so like instructions about talking about games, pronunciation rules. Like you can create your own material. There are so many wonderful resources out there to create. Of course, you can use PowerPoint. PowerPoint is like awesome. It has so many things. You can also use online resources like Canva. That's Canva, right? Like canva.com. I'm writing it here. Or Genially, which I also love. And so let me show you another example next. So I mentioned that that I love games and I love like game elements. And so this is an example of a game that I designed to teach about flipped learning in my flipped learning workshops. This is a game that it's an interactive game. It uses the tool Genially. And when teachers, who are my students, play the game, they click over and a question comes out and they have to talk about flipped learning, and then they can move the little locks, the little books into their collectible boxes. There are so many ways. And I think some of you were interested in thinking about like, what games can I use? Genially, for example, has really wonderful templates that you can use in primary, secondary, university. Like I'm teaching university and I create these games for university students and for educators. So, I definitely recommend these resources. These are my top resources. There are a lot others, but definitely these are my top. Okay, thank you. Next. All right. Next step, plan for accountability. When we talk about accountability, it's answering that question that you see right there. Accountability is, how will you verify that the content was revised and learned? When you flip, you need to have some type of element where students show responsibility for their learning. And there are a lot of tools that you can use. But the key element here, the key message here is, don't just give them the flipped content. They have to do something with it, right? Going back to what Robin was saying, give them a task. That's the accountability. How can you do this? You can use different tools. For example, Actively Learn is for readings. Genially, I already mentioned it. You can design. Genially is more designing material. Edpuzzle is for videos. Worksheets, right? Like nowadays there are course books that even have flipped worksheets, which are awesome, right? I know Now You has flipped worksheets. So definitely there are so many beautiful options that you have. Mind maps. Create a drawing, do a sketch note. There are so many ways. And this depends if you flip outside, right? It has to be something that they could take out, like asynchronously. And if you flip inside, you can also use other types of tools like Flipgrid for videos, Kahoot in real life, like in a live game, or Kahoot could be outside. Flipgrid could be outside. Quizzes also is like a Kahoot, which could go live. And Padlet, we just did a Padlet. So Padlet allows you to work live, but you could also send the link so that they do it outside of class and then you check, right? So, but definitely accountability here is key. All right, next. Okay, so when we talk about accountability, one of the key, I think we're lucky if we count on a platform that has a lot of accountability already embedded in it. Okay, so here this is one example of a platform, Richmond Learning Platform. And Richmond Learning Platform has different resources that you can use as an educator that you can take advantage of. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to, recreate the fill in the blanks activity or the multiple choice or, whatever you want to do. If you already have a platform where you can actually have the accountability, take advantage of it. Why did I even put this here? It's because I've noticed as an educator, as an academic consultant, that sometimes we don't even know I don't even know how to use that platform. I didn't even know I could do that. There's videos I didn't know. Yes, sometimes we don't take the time to check it out. And in pandemic, sometimes like we don't have time maybe for the training sessions, or a lot of things are going on. But definitely, my recommendation here is if you have a platform, check it out, like with those flip learning eyes, like with a different vision, like, how can I take advantage? How can I apply accountability to my students, when I'm flipping? So keep that in mind. All right, next. Thank you, Aldo. All right. So because sharing is important, we're going to do another Padlet, but this is a completely different link. And what I would like you to do here is to share a picture. Let's look at those instructions. Add a picture or add a link of your favorite tool. So let me just share that link with you over here. And because I've shared links with you, I would really like to learn, what are you using? What can we share? What are these awesome tools that I know exist that maybe I'm not telling anyone else that they exist, right? So there's the links. Okay, thank you. So I sent one, but there's a double link there, and I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to see what you're sharing. Okay, so when I say share the link, go to that, click on that plus button and click on link. If you have the link, right? Like if it's easy for you and you could put the link, we could actually see it and people can click on it. And you can save this link that I'm sharing with you right here, and you could check it out later, right? This is not for me, this is for you to check it out. So let's see what you're, all right, so we have class kick. I don't know class kick, so that one's gonna go on my list. Nearpod, I love. Mentimeter, all right, to ask for polls, awesome. So Menti, Jamboard, Google Jamboard, lovely. Kahoot, Flipgrid, all right. Abigail, is Abigail name or resource? I'm not sure. All right, so they're putting the links. Jamboard, okay, awesome. Word wall, okay. Live worksheets, okay. But where is live worksheets? Where's the link? Okay, here it is. Okay, I see it right here. All right, awesome. If somebody wants to see it, okay, a lot of you are using Jamboard. Lovely. I use Jamboard. I have a blog post on Jamboard for feedback. It's a great tool. All right, so we have a lot of live worksheets. Live worksheets is super popular, it seems. Okay, quizzes, word wall. InShot, okay, for making interactive song videos. Awesome, thank you, Jorge. Great. Okay, Genially Classroom Screen, Bamboozle, okay. There's a lot here. We're gonna see a lot of options, right? Okay, word wall, word wall, word wall. Poll Everywhere, I love Poll Everywhere. It's one of my favorites also. Quizlet, Kahoot and Padlet, Kahoot, okay. I'm seeing if maybe we have, so there's some that you're definitely using that are, that I could see repeated here. Okay, but yeah, take that time to add those resources. If you see there's a different resource, if there's a lot that are writing Padlet, just put a little heart so we know, oh yeah, I also use Padlet. Oh, I also use Menti. I also use Jamboard. I use Poll Everywhere, yeah? So that we can have the new tools there and we can interact with what people are writing. Okay, book widgets, great. There are many, many, many resources that you can find out there, but here there's already some really some really good ones. Class Dojo is great as well. Okay, wonderful. All right, thank you for sharing. Okay, our time is almost running out, so we're gonna go with the next steps. Okay, next. All right, step number 8. It's important to plan active learning tasks, okay? If you are flipping your class and the actual synchronous class is passive, quiet, write, like write a list of, and we're not taking advantage of this class to focus on higher order thinking, then what's the point of flipping, right? When we flip, what you tend to flip is what students need to remember and understand. So that's like lower order thinking skills according to Bloom's taxonomy. That's what we flip. Anything that's going to require students to understand a concept, remember a concept, you flip that. What you don't flip is when students have to apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. That's what the group space is for. That's what you're going to take advantage to work with students. So Bloom's taxonomy, a lot of flipping experts talk about Bloom's taxonomy, and there are great resources and ideas that you can find online. Like how can I use creating? And nowadays, a lot of resources for them to create, right? Next. And so what happens in the traditional and flipped learning setting? Well, basically, when you flip, the individual space is what's focusing on these lower order thinking skills, right? So that's just like kind of a graphic to show us how it changes, right? Okay, next. And here, it's really important when we're thinking actively with active pedagogy to provide a model. It's not just about telling students, look, you're going to take notes. You're going to make a sketch note. You're going to use a graphic organizer, make a mind map, create slides. No. It's important to give students a model so that they know how they have to access the flipped content, so that you're scaffolding that process and you're teaching them how to be autonomous. We cannot assume that students will know how to do the task autonomously if they have never done it before. So it's important to model. So I want to give you an example next. Okay, this is an example of a sketch note that a group of students did in one of my classes. I was teaching about cognitive strategies, and look at that beauty. Of course, there was a student that was very keen on drawing, etc. So this was something that I did in a face-to-face setting. What happens when we're digital? What happens when we can't literally be on top of students checking what they're doing because we're monitoring, passing from one room to another? It's not easy. We have a lot of students. It depends. So let me show you. Next one. So this is just an example of, I know you probably can't read the text. It's not so important. It's how I use the platform to tell my students what I want them to do. So here my students had to do a digital sketch note, right? And so they had to do a digital sketch note about themselves. And I put an example of me, a very simple one, not super elaborate. But I told them, look, you can use this tool. Here's the tutorial. Here's an example. This is more or less what I want you to do. And then students did a lovely job using pictures, putting in, boxes, icons, etc. But when we show them a model, it's a lot easier for them to know how they're going to create after you've already, after they've already accessed that flipped content and you want them to demonstrate, what they know. Next. Okay. And don't forget warm-ups and wrap-ups. So there's a website called Bright Classroom Ideas. I'm going to just write it down really fast. Bright Classroom Ideas. And in pandemic, they have developed these really cool speaking, drawing activities, and you can use them as warm-ups. So that's just one idea. But you can put a video. A lot of teachers are doing mindfulness and asking students to breathe. Just okay, let's breathe in, let's breathe out, let's stretch. All right, let's put a song. So, there are a lot of things that we can do as warm-ups. But Bright Classroom Ideas, I think has been really lovely, and they continue to develop activities that we could do just to open and to open our classes like in a fun way digitally. Okay, next. My time is, I know we started a little later. Okay, decide how you will assess. So please think of what you're going to do after every point of your lesson. This is super important. And let me show you an example next. So in my case, I assess, I use rubrics, I use checklists, I send recordings, I use the chat. And when they're doing something, I send them something privately in the chat. There are so many ways, but we need to always keep in mind assessment. Next. And finally, just to close, I take this question from a book by George Couros. He wrote a book called The Innovator's Mindset, super recommended. And he talks about mindset, and he talks about growth mindset and being an educator who is required to innovate. And he asks this question: what would I like to be a student in my own classes? And for me, when I plan for a flipped class, I always ask myself when I have my plan, I'm like, okay, if I was a student, how would I feel? Like, is this cool, or am I gonna fall asleep? So definitely, this is like a question that I want to leave you with. Next. And depending on the types of responses that you have here, if it's frequently, what are you missing? If it's almost always, okay, keep at it. Always, probably not, because we are human beings, and I don't think all our classes are awesome, but we want to aim towards the almost always. If it's not so much, you need to refocus your actual approach. And if it's, sometimes, okay, what could be improved? All right, next. So here are some recommended resources. If you want to take a screenshot of this, you can keep them in mind. My blog, I always share what I do in my classes. I put pictures, I put reflections. If you go into my blog, you're going to see that there's a lot of things that I love to share with educators. But you can also check Flip Learning Global, Flip Learning Network, the ALAS International, and Facebook groups, and Twitter, the hashtag Flip Learning. You will find so many wonderful educators, resources, ideas, etc. And with that, I am done. And I think I have passed a little bit of the time. I'm really sorry. Thank you so much. And the next slide, you could see my Twitter handle if you want to follow me or if you want to stay in touch. Thank you.
Yeah, Marta, thank you. Thank you. We were all just listening to all your wonderful ideas. Thank you. And we have very good comments and questions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So one of the questions is, let's see, because there are so many. How can I work that technique when the students have very basic level? Can you give an example?
That was repeated several times because they are
Yes.
really, it's a reality that is very spread, so they are worried about that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think I would need more context, but let's try to put some context there. So you're going to teach a very basic topic. Students don't have the level. The first question is, how do you teach it? Like, how do you teach it? Are you using the board? Are you using pictures? Like, how do you, in your regular classes, what is it that you do? And then, okay, can I transfer this into something else? For example, something you could do is literally turn on your computer, imagine you're talking to your students, and record yourself. And that's flipping, yes? Like, literally, it's like, you're like, hi students. So today, and you can record yourself if you have a board, like behind you, tal cual. Like, you can literally record yourself like, okay, so today we're going to see the verb to be. I am Marta. I am, yes, like you can do it physically. You can use it if you have a whiteboard. I think the video could be the first option, but with the very basic explanations, you're going to find a lot of resources online. YouTube has a lot of resources, but also the books. Many of the books that you're using probably have really wonderful and very easy to understand resources. For example, Robin was talking about Grammar Greg. If Grammar Greg has, I mean, it's thought for children. So the video is at a scaffolded level for students to be able to understand it. So I think like the key here is number one, for us to trust that our students could do it, because I think that's we start getting stressed out and we're like, oh, no, they're gonna get stressed, they're not gonna do it, they're not. Give it a try. I mean, remember, try again. Like if something doesn't work, you try again, and then you look at the context, but definitely give it a try, and students will surprise you. Sometimes it's us, we're the ones who put the barrier. We're the ones that are like, no, entender, no, es que está dificilísimo. They'll surprise you. But if you're not sure and you feel like, no, I would feel very comfortable if it's me, record yourself. Do it as if you were talking to them, make your recording and send it outside of class, right? If that's the way. And then of course you need to count on parents, because parents are the ones that will allow students to do all the autonomous work. Young learners can't do it by themselves, but high school or middle school students, of course, they can do it. So I think that would be like my key, like how you can go for it. Like today, take that cell phone, hello, and go ahead and record your explanation, yeah? Or use the resources that you have. Take advantage of them.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you.
One that I would like to ask, because it is also related to a meeting that I had in a school, and they are worried about, because in Peru they have, as well as in many other countries in Latin America, inclusive education. Mm-hmm. So the question is, how much can they flip learning? How much can flip learning improve their classes in order for those students with different abilities to be successful in class?
Okay, so I want to answer that question with a question. If you are working inclusive education, why aren't you flipping? That's my question, because flip learning, so here I'm going to answer, but that would be my first question. Because when you flip, you can add so many things. When we talk about inclusive education, could be cognitive, could be physical, it could be so many things. But as an educator, you can flip with a video, you can put subtitles, you can put a script, you can send an audio. There are things that in person we can, I mean, it's like, it's what it is, o sea, aquí, that what you're seeing is what you get. But when I can make the decision as an educator to flip, I can say, I'm going to make a video, I'm going to put subtitles, I'm going to put an audio, literally we can think differentiation at a huge spectrum, let's say, and provide different types of material and provide choice. But when you're in class, what choice are you going to give students if you're the one that's talking? It's really hard. It would be, as a teacher, you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to talk and I'm going to show them the subtitles while I talk. No, o sea, it doesn't work. It's really hard. So that's why my question was, why aren't you flipping? If you're working inclusive education, you will immediately notice the benefits of being able to give students content outside of class, for example, that could cater to their needs. What are the needs? That depends on each context. How can we respond to these? That also depends on each content, but definitely it's going to help so much. Do not even think about it twice, like definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions on your side, Pat? Because I have one more.
I think there's one about pronunciation. How can they work pronunciation with this technique?
Well, that's one of topics that I love. Yeah, pronunciation is my thing, apart from flipping and growth mindset. So how can they do the same? A poster, a video, listen, an audio. I mean, what could replace your explanation as a teacher with the pronunciation? Do you have the book with a pronunciation section? Use it. Mm-hmm. Flip with the section of the book. You tell students, look, go to page 52, exercise 5, pronunciation, whatever. Flip it. They have to prepare. They could prepare it at home, and then they can use, I don't know, a tool like Flipgrid, and then they have to record themselves. So many options. Like, I wish I had so much time to tell you all the options that you can use, but you can flip anything and everything that requires a teacher talking, literally. Pronunciation, reading, listening, speaking speaking, the teacher speaking, of course, that's what you're flipping. Vocabulary. I mean, so many things. Yes.
Someone is worried about students not having the same access to technology. So if they would be affected if you flip. So what are your thoughts on that?
So the first thing is you need to keep in mind students' needs. So if you're going to flip with a YouTube video and you know you have students who do not have access to the video, why would you flip with a YouTube video? Yes. So the first thing is, remember, one of the steps, keep in mind the context and your resources. That's the first thing. If you have students who will not be able to access certain elements that you're going to use or resources you're going to use, you need to have a plan B. So you could say, I'm going to do a video, but I can download it and give it to students in USB, or I could send it to the parents, or you know what some teachers do? They when the students don't have access, but the parents have like WhatsApp with datos, with internet, they send it to them through their WhatsApp. But again, we need to think outside the box. The pandemic has placed us in a situation where we need to literally embrace all these obstacles and start to think differently and start to differentiate. And I think what I appreciate from the pandemic is that it has made obvious what we all knew, but has made obvious that we need to definitely change how we're teaching. We need to become active. In a virtual setting, we are physically inactive, and that's where everything else has to become active. And that's where it becomes obvious, if we were very passive in our teaching, that we need to make changes. And fortunately, there are so many resources that we can use.
Absolutely. Okay. And someone was worried about the Bloom taxonomy, how they can integrate it in their teaching. Well, I would answer with my opinion, and it's, don't worry about it. Our editors have already taken care of that, for example, no?
There you go.
So you don't have to worry about it.
Like, we solved it for you. We got it covered. Lovely.
As you mentioned, there are many tools that maybe they haven't just gone through them, and they are already there.
Exactly.
So that's the invitation. And I think that it's perfectly clear for all of us. Go and curate what we have and take advantage of the new things that are coming out.
Exactly.
Marta, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you, everybody, for connecting and for your great questions.
And everybody sent lots of love to you, to Robin, to Patricia for organizing this. Thank you very much. We hope to see you tomorrow. Patty, any last words for today, not for your life?
No, I think that was a brilliant talk, both of them. Yeah. Different aspects of flipping. So yeah, they were very interesting. And the good thing, as Angela said, was that all of this is integrated into our 2 courses, one for primary, one for secondary. So it's all been done. It's ready for you to use. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So just make sure that we show them to you and you have access to them. So
exactly.
Thank you very much. See you tomorrow, same time. No, Patty?
No, tomorrow it's 4:30. We start a little bit later. Yes.
Later, 15 minutes.
We have Paul Seligson tomorrow. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The gift for every teacher of English, early fluency method.
Yes, exactly.
We look forward to hearing from Paul. So thank you very much, everybody. See you tomorrow. Have a lovely evening. And well, thank you, Marta. Go and celebrate because you're done. We continue tomorrow and the team wants to say goodbye. So I will share with you the final video.
Bienvenido al futuro. Richmond Solution 2.0, tu mejor opción. Gracias
por participar.
El cambio está en tus manos.